According to Josh Harris, signing Joel Embiid to a contract extension is one of the team's offseason priorities. Tom Moore of the Bucks County Courier-Times, Calkins Media, he wrote about it. And I think there's a lot of layers to this question, Tom, as to the time frame on this, how realistic this is. Are other teams going to, get involved if the Sixers don't because he'll become a restricted free agent? So how do you kind of read the position that the Sixers are in with a guy who's only played 31 years yet entering, quote-unquote, his fourth year into the league?
Yeah, he's played 31 of a possible 246 games. They, starting July 1, which I guess is Saturday, until the start of the regular season, and we won't know that date probably till August, but it'll be a little earlier in October than it was last year. Last year was the 26th. Might be a week or so earlier. They're trying to spread games out and, limit the back-to-backs and stuff like that. Now, to clear it up, no other team can do anything with him until the summer of 18 is when, if they don't sign him to a long-term deal and then he becomes a restricted free agent, in 2018, another team could theoretically sign him to an offer sheet, and then the Sixers could match it. If I talk to somebody, knows what's going on around the league, maybe 3 weeks ago, and he suggested that he would talk to Embiid and his people, but he would think you wouldn't want to give him a max deal just because of the injuries and missing so much time that you can still qualify him for, I guess it's $8 million after this season, and then he would become restricted in 2018. And that would give you another year to see how healthy he is. Does he play 30 games, 50 games, 60 games, whatever the number is? And you'd have a better idea maybe what to do by this time next year than right now, when he's coming off of a surgery on his left knee that limited him to 31 games, and then the previous 2 years, the right foot surgery, and then that also he didn't play in back-to-backs or, was on minutes restrictions and stuff like that. So I wouldn't think that they would throw, $100 million for 4 years or $130 million for 5 years at him now, given, how much time he's missed. I mean, that would be a risk. He's healthy. He's certainly that kind of player, but I think it might be a little premature to do that.
At this stage of the game, like you said, he's only played 31 games. Obviously, we all know that story. I don't know how well you or anybody really has a read on Embiid, but it certainly from the outside looking in seems that he really enjoys it here. So do you think the Sixers are in danger of overplaying their hand about how much he likes it here and maybe insulting him in some way if they don't approach him?
I mean, I think, Mike, that I think there'll be some conversations. I just don't know that necessarily it's going to, that it would be two sides putting hard and fast numbers and and serious negotiations. I think you have to make the call and you see what that side's looking for. You think what you think is fair at this juncture, and if those numbers are far apart, which could be the case, and might maybe then you say, well, why don't we wait and we'll revisit this next year about this time and kind of go from there. Because the other side of the coin is if you do commit $100 million for 4 years or whatever it is, and, there are continued injury issues and so on, that's a lot of money to throw. And then, that wouldn't start until 2018-19 season, that 4-year extension. By 2020, you have to extend Simmons and you have to extend Saric after 4 years. So, you'd have a lot of money tied up there that could prevent you if, and obviously the Sixers hope and everyone hopes it's not an ongoing situation. But if there are continued injury issues or things that cause them to miss significant numbers of games, that's going to tie up a large chunk of money for, 4 years into 2022, which could impact, other free agents and even re-signing your own free agents at some point.
Right. So at the end, when is the time frame that other teams can? You said the summer of 18, so that would be at the end of this season coming up.
Correct. Yeah, July 1st would be the start of free agency, and theoretically, another team could present him with an offer sheet that he would have to agree to, and then the Sixers would have two days to match that offer sheet, which you would certainly think that they would match what someone else is willing to pay. Now, unless, if there's a lot of injuries this year or continued issues and a limited number of games, and then someone throws a lot of money next July, then you have a decision to make. Then he could leave if the Sixers don't match it. He would leave and be gone. Otherwise, he could play for his fifth year number. If there's no offer sheet, the Sixers could qualify him and have him under contract for 18-19. But at the end of 19, in that scenario, he would be unrestricted. The Sixers could pay him more than anybody else,
right?
But depending on the circumstances, he would be free to go somewhere else if that's what he would choose to do in that scenario.
So was this, Tom, similar, obviously different with the injury stuff, but was this kind of what Golden State did with Steph Curry, that they got him on the deal that they currently have him, that 4-year, $44 million?
Well, I mean, the salary cap and the max deals, they really just exploded. Last summer was when the $70 million for Evan Turner for 4 years, and these numbers just kind of exploded. Some people are going to get a lot of money this summer, but then the cap is projected to go down from between this summer 17 to 18 next year, a little bit, not a lot. But Curry was very good, but was not. He's not who he was now, when he agreed to that extension. I believe that was going into what ended up being his MVP season. So, that was a significant raise from what he was making on his rookie contract, $3 or $4 million a year. Now the market is much higher. Timothy Mozgov got $64 million over 4 years. Biyombo got similar type money, I think maybe even more. So the numbers are pretty staggering. So I could see why, he certainly is a talent that has a skill set unlike any of these guys. But just as I said, the body of work missing what is it, 233 of a possible 264 games in 3 years. That's a pretty significant number.
Hey, Tom, we hear J.J. Redick's name a lot. Shooters seem to be like the likely target for the Sixers in this offseason, but any interest in bringing back a guy like Ersan Ilyasova? We've heard that name as well.
Yeah, that was my Sunday column. I wrote that because if you look at their roster, they had been top-heavy with big men. Now, I don't know what you want to call Ben Simmons. He's going to probably be starting at point guard on offense and then guarding whoever covers him, so which would be probably a small forward. So if you don't count him as a guard and Korkmaz comes over, which it sounds like Brett Brown and Brian Colangelo said that is likely, you're looking at 6 guards already on the roster, and that's not counting Simmons. And you'd only have right now you'd have 3 forwards and 3 centers, counting Okafor, and then Ben Simmons is whatever you count him, whether it's a guard or forward. That would be 13 players, so you'd only have 2 more full roster spots. That's why I thought Ilyasova, because your only power forward on the roster right now is Dario Saric. So, and I think he's shown signs that he could be a starting power forward and so on, but he shot 31% from 3 last year. With Embiid, you really need somebody who can stretch the floor, and Ilyasova shot 35.3 last year, even though he played with 3 different teams. And I think if he wants more money and more years than they're looking at. But if the market isn't as fruitful for him as he hopes, maybe you could get him on a shorter deal, 2 years, $30 million or something like that. And that would give you another big guy, another power forward, probably a starter. Saric would come off the bench, which would make the Sixers better. You'd have a good outside shooter, guy who draws fouls, a good teammate, a guy Embiid likes playing alongside, has said. And, you'd have 2 years for Saric to see if he can become that stretch four they want. And in 2 years, it could be his job, or maybe he would be best coming off the bench. And that would only leave 1 roster spot, and you'd really probably need a backup big man, maybe just a journeyman, a guy who's been in the league who can give you 15 or 20 minutes if you need it. Because if Embiid is not healthy, your centers are Rashawn Holmes and Jahlil Okafor at this point. So you really need some experience, and you really need a shooter, and you need a backup big guy. So you may only have 2 spots, so you're going to have somebody who does more than one of those things. And as much as I think Redick would be a good short-term solution for 2 or 3 years, you have so many guards I think it would be better if that's a 4. Serge Ibaka, I think, is going to be too much money. He's younger. He's 27. He's got better numbers, but he's going to be $20+ million a year. I don't know that you want to commit that. Danilo Gallinari is a guy I like. He's a small forward who can play some 4. He's going to be looking for a lot of money too, but he's also a very good shooter, and he's 6'10". So there are some guys out there that they could, pursue, and that would really help them, in multiple areas.
Tom Moore's with us here, covers the Sixers, Calkins Media, and, of course, the Sixers have a lot of things going on with the draft in the books. In the rear view, they've got free agency coming up. He just talked about Ersan Ilyasova and the possibility of bringing him back to Philly. But, what about some of the things on the current roster that kind of get under, not talked about a lot, like Jared Bayless? Where do you see his role on this team? Because you got Fultz, you just mentioned it seems like they're going to use Simmons in the backcourt. So what does that do for a guy like Bayless? And then if they pursued, say, a J.J. Redick, I mean, that seems like it really crowds the backcourt there. But Bayless is a guy they seemingly kept, pumped up a lot. Like, hey, we're getting this guy back. Don't forget about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of to me, more sort of a poor man. I mean, older, but almost like sort of a poor man's Fultz to a degree. Not quite as athletic, but he can play both guard positions. He's a good outside shooter. He shot over 40% 2 years ago. Only played in 3 games last year due to the wrist injury and the wrist surgery, the ligament damage. And don't forget, you have Stauskas, you have McConnell, and you have Oahu Cabarrot. So you have a ton of guards, and that's why I think. And Bayless has 2 more years on his contract, the upcoming year and the year after that. Gerald Henderson, they have a $9 million guarantee that is due on Friday. That my assumption is they're probably not going to pick that up, and they'll owe him $1 million just because if they keep him and Kirk Korkmaz comes, then they have 7 guards plus Simmons, and they only have 1 roster spot left to get a 4-5, and a shooter and whatever. So I think that probably he will not be back. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. If they weren't able to get Fultz, he could have potentially been the starter because he can play on the ball and off the ball, 1 and 2. He's a pretty good shooter, can be a primary ball handler or a secondary ball handler. So I don't really know. I mean, obviously you can't play 6 guards. You might be able to play 4, but that's it.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to. Some guys are not going to be playing, or go down to the D-League or make a move or trade somebody for a second-round pick or something because, as I said, used to be too many big guys, when Noel was here too, and you had all the centers, and now it's too many backcourt guys. The roster balance has sort of flipped.
Sixers basketball here with Tom Moore, and, draft night came and went. Jahlil Okafor, anything out there, Tom Moore, because he's still here.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty apparent that whatever is, Brian Colangelo's hearing that he can get for him is not what he thinks Okafor is worth, because nothing has happened. And I got to figure that the market is decreasing. I mean, what they could have received for him at the 2016 draft, I don't think is anywhere near what they could get now. And I don't think his value is going to go up. I don't know if, you can include him in another deal possibly, or I don't even know if you could get a protected future first rounder for him at this point. I don't know. I mean, it would be best for all concerned for him to go elsewhere and get a new start. But Colangelo's not going to give him away, and clearly what other teams think he's worth is not what the offers he's getting. So I'm not sure how this plays itself out because he's under contract, for this year. This is his third year option, and then they have a team option for the 4th year too. So I'm really not sure what happens here, but again, it would be best if for him and for the Sixers, everybody, to get a new start and have a chance to kind of go to a new situation and kind of see what happens.
Tom Moore, beat writer for Calkins Media, at TMoore76ers on Twitter, and follow him there for the Sixers off-season stuff as free agency beginning here in just a couple of days, and we'll have plenty on that here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.